Today. The support that we feel from our community is wonderful. My name is Michelle Tate. I am honored to be the mayor of Harrisville. This is my third year, going into my fourth year as mayor, and I have just been so overwhelmed with the support of the community, with how we come together for community events like this, and the pride that we have in our area, which is what we're here celebrating today. So we appreciate all of you being here today. So let's just move on with this, shall we? I'm just going to introduce some people that are important to how we came about today. First of all, it would be anything without you here, so thank you again. We have a Terrikee Monument Committee. This was originally installed about 10 years ago, I believe, and they were instrumental then. And then when we needed to update this and take care of it again, they stepped up and did this again. So we have Chairman Tyler Malmrose, and I'm not sure where he is. He's right over there. There he is. Thank you for seeing what this looks like. And right next here on the podium is Max Jackson, and he's our co-chair. Another one on the chairman or on the committee, excuse me, was Dennis Probasco, and he has since moved. Is he here today?
Yes, he is. He's on a tour of his house.
Okay, he used to live across the street over there, and he's just sold it, and people are moving in there today. How amazing is that? So that's our Terrikee Committee, and they have made all of this happen today. We have our area historians, and they are over here, I believe. We have Shanna Edwards. Raise your hand, Shanna. Where are you? There she is. Joyce Larson. No, she's not here today. Joanne Christensen is, and I'm not sure if Anna's here either. They actually wrote a history of Harrisville many years ago, and they have some of those historical books over there. If you would like to look at those, and they'll sell those, it'd be great for you if you want to look. Oh, Anna's over here. Thank you. So you can go and visit them. We also have great involvement with our Weber County Heritage Foundation. We have Dr. Katie Nelson, and she's right there. Thank you. She's the executive director. And then our president, Katie Stewart. She's not here today. Okay. But she was with us when we were having committee meetings, so we appreciate all of that. We also have to thank our Harrisville City Public Works, our police department. They're always helpful. We just have a great community as far as everyone stepping up when it's needed. We have Shoshone tribal representatives. Darren Perry, where'd you go? He's right there. He's here. We're very honored to have him here today, and you're going to be impressed. We also have members of the Urban Van Stewart family here, and I believe where'd they move? Right there. Welcome. If you're here, a part of that family, raise your hands. Back here. Okay, that's where I saw you in the first place. Welcome. We also have, this beautiful teepee in the back. That was someone from our sister city, North Ogden. His name is Landry Ross Kelly, and he was been interested in this since he was 13. We need to thank, we have Olivia and Caden Call who live across the street, and they're young kids. Where are they? Right here. Okay. They're going to take care of any mischief that might happen here. They're our official watch keepers of the monument. So thank you, and we need that, right? And with that, I think my part is done for the moment. I'm going to turn this over to Tyler Malmrose.
Okay. I'm here to announce the program. And first of all, I want to give a big thanks to our mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor, without which we couldn't have done this, and all the city crews. And I'll run through the program real quick here, and then we'll just call the members up as they are going to speak. So the first one will be a blessing by Darren Perry, our Shoshone extraordinaire spokesman. And Max will give a brief history of the monument. Shannon will get up and give a brief history. Shannon will get up and give a brief history of 4 Mile Creek and Terrikee and her involvement. Next, we'll have the remarks by the urban steward representative. And that's Stuart Calloway, sitting right over there. And next, we'll have the Weber County Heritage Foundation speak. I think Katie's going to give us a few words, Dr. Katie Nelson. And then Darren Perry will give some more remarks. Then we'll have the unveiling of the plaque and to wrap it up, we'll give a dedicatory prayer by Mr. Perry also. So let's see. Do we want to save the picture presentation for last? Yeah. I think that's it. Darren, if you want to give the land blessing, we'd appreciate it.
O Great Spirit, whose voice we hear in the winds, and whose breath gives life to all the world, hear us. We come before you as our small children. We are humble and weak. We seek your guidance. Let us speak to each other today and always with medicine words, words that bless and inspire, words of encouragement and love. Make our hands respect the things you have made, and our ears to hear the voice of your hands. May we come to you without shame. Make us strong so that we may be able to fight our greatest enemy, ourselves. May we hear your voice. May we do the things that we need to do every day to make life better for all mankind. We're grateful for the opportunity this has brought us all together to share history, to share perspective, and help us to look each other in the eyes at the end of the day and leave with nothing but kindness and love and friendship in our hearts. We're thankful for our cultures that bring us together. We're grateful for the stories that have been told. And we say these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
With Urban Van Stewart and the tragedy surrounding the shooting of Chief Terrikee. This all kind of got started as Dennis and Tyler and I were just irrigating or something. It was just palaver across the fence. A bunch of farmers, how we do. And we got to talking about Terrikee and the history and said, you know, something, if we don't do something to preserve that history, it's just going to get forgotten. And so we set out to put this monument together. Dennis says, hey, I've got an idea. And behind his house here sat this wrought iron fencing. And this was taken off the old Denver Rio Grande train station in Salt Lake when they tore it down. So it's of the period. So we had that sandblasted and powder coated and set that up. Great people provided the rock. Peterson's provided the original plaque here. And I'm surprised it lasted 10.5 years, but as you can see, over time, sun, rain, it's like a few BBs took its toll on it. And we've got a couple of great monuments for honoring Pleasant Green Taylor, and farther down the street, Martin Henderson Harris. And they both had nice bronze raised plaques. And so when this started getting deteriorated, we reached out to the Heritage Foundation and Dr. Nilsson, and they said they'd be happy to help the city get a nice raised lettered bronze plaque like the rest of them. And so we set out to do that, and Mayor Tate said, I think we ought to have a redo on this and really have a nice bang-up ceremony for this, and I'm just glad everybody showed up, and so that's kind of the history of this. The pictures talked about is sitting over there on the table. We've kind of got it out of view. You're welcome to go look at it. It's kind of gruesome, but it's one of two paintings that are the same. One of them hangs at the Weber State University Archives, and the Harrisville City has had in its possession since it was painted, but there's really no good place to put it because it's just so gruesome. But Chairman Perry has said that, hey, I think we could probably put this at the Shoshone Museum up at Franklin County at the Bear River Massacre site. And so Harrisville City is going to turn that painting over to the Shoshone tribe today. And also afterwards, we've kind of got a good idea of where this all took place. If you look down in front of that shed, there is a bust of Chief Terrikee. We're pretty sure that is where he perished. We know that Urban Van Stewart, his home was 300 yards southwest of the old church, was set there in front of where the cars are parked. And this takes down along the property behind my house. We think we know kind of where that cabin was. And so when this is over, we've got golf carts for those that can't walk, but we're going to take a tour down there to kind of give everybody an idea of what happened here on that fateful day on 4 Mile Creek back in 1850. So without any further ado, we will turn the time over to the next person's going to talk. It's Shanna, our historian. And she can probably tell you how we know the place where he died. She's one of these. Or you like it?
Okay, I would like 4 children to come up and hold some pictures for me. I see these two here, and he built his home on the west side of the 4 Mile Creek. The creek that goes through here is 4 Mile Creek, and he built way west on the side. In fact, if any of you have ever been to soccer games at the fairgrounds, prisoner of war camp for Germans and Italians, and then it was removed at that time. So anyway, but where we're standing, I want you to just take a look down the street that way, as far as you can see. If you turn around, you can see this was all part of the land grant government, and so he moved here. Well, it was in the early spring that Martin Harris moved here, and Pleasant Green moved here in the fall, and he built this white house that you can see over here. He built, it was a 2-room adobe house, and then because there were some, because there was some hostility taking place in Utah, more down central Utah, they had to move to a fort, and they moved to Biggins Fort, which was over on 2nd Street, and that was in 1853. So they moved back in 1856, and by that time he had married a second wife. His first wife's name was Clara, and his second wife was Mary. So he built another house onto that. They joined them together, another 2-room adobe house. And later, his grandson, Fred G. Taylor, bought the house and added the second level and and added some of the brick and stucco of the house. Okay, now if you look down this street, it's the third house in the north part of the house, and Sarah Jane lived in the south part of the house. And that house was removed in 1962 when the house was built in front of it. So that this was behind the other house. Now the next house coming this way is the one that Max Jackson lives in, with William Heber and Melissa Taylor. And they were, William this area. And so they spent a lot of time talking, and she, of course, heard the story many times, and that also helped to know where the incident took place. But in 1930, they built this house where Tyler lives, and that's where they live in Ben Longman's Peak. And in there, it mentions that it's 30 feet, the Harrisville history book, and that you can purchase it for $10 if you want to buy one. We have a coloring book about the history of Harrisville, and the children, if you one per family, or you can always go to the city and get them more for your family. They tell a little bit about the history of Harrisville, and they are free. And also, there's a walking tour that you can pick up at the city, and that's kind of fun because it's a fun family home evening thing. You can take your family. It shows where all the historic spots are, and you can pick this up at the city, or you can go up there to the website, which is www.cityofharrisville.com.
And I consider that to be a sacred responsibility as well. And I appreciate the opportunity to come here now and represent Urban Van Stewart and his descendants. And it's amazing to me that this many years can pass and we have had this opportunity. So amazing how things work together. Maxwell and I one day at a wedding reception of a family member put together that we had this connection, and boy, here we are now. So crazy how that works. As we contemplate the tragic killing of Chief Terrikee on this site nearly 171 years ago, we have to consider the delicate situation that had been developing because different cultures were coming together in this area, and they had different ideologies and perspectives, and they were now starting to interact with each other, and they hadn't really figured out what that looked like or what that was going to be like going forward. Urban Van had just come into the valley in Salt Lake 3 years earlier in September of 1847, and we really don't know exactly how things worked out that he came here, but our understanding is that those who came here as those original settlers were by assignment, and so we believe he was here from his perspective doing duty to his church, and they were here to build up a place where they could practice their religion. The Shoshones and other native groups who were living here and who had called this land home for many generations had some interactions ongoing with Europeans, you know, the explorers who had come up through this area when Mexico claimed this land, the fur traders and trappers. And so they had had some interactions, and of course they had probably known Miles Goodyear as well as any of them. And he had actually lived among them and adopted a lot of their cultures. But he also had kept some of the European culture as well. And so, for example, he claimed land along the Weber River, actually had a deed to that land that was granted by the Mexican government. The historic record indicates that Chief Terrikee was a good man. He was friendly, he was wise, he was a leader among his own people. And as these cultures bumped up against each other and the frustrations began to mount, Terrikee had demonstrated the ability to calm his people and to bring both groups toward peaceable solutions. So that fact that Terrikee had demonstrated that ability made this accidental killing that happened here that night even more of a tragic situation of much wider proportions. Knowing what we know now, it's easy to say that it was a mistake for Urban Van Stewart and his co-worker to fire shots when they heard rustling in the cornfield. I believe that in hindsight, Urban Van would agree Yeah, not the best thing. The problem is we don't have enough information of the days and evenings leading up to this event to know why he took that action. He always said it was a mistake, that it was, they were firing to scare off either an animal or something like that. So we don't have enough information to be able to pass judgment on why he took that action. What we do know is that his decision had a tragic, serious consequence. This is where I would like to just say something about Urban Van Stewart's character. He knew immediately that he had a problem. He knew that this was going to create a very difficult situation, and yet he took full responsibility. He went to the neighbors and warned them of what had happened. And of course, the neighbors were very frustrated. He was chastised, I think, by everybody that he talked to. They were told him that this action that he had taken was rash and unjustifiable, and I'm pretty sure he believed that too at that point. They all agreed that there's no way we can harbor you here or try to protect you, and so they asked him to please leave. So he realized, I can't stay here. That just would not be good for the situation, and so he made arrangements for his wife and his 2 small children, and then he quickly left. That made it easier for the settlers here, because then they were able to tell the Shoshones, who were so frustrated, we don't know where he went, he disappeared. So but that was agreed upon by everybody who had been involved. So I think no one would have wished to be able to go back and change what had happened more than Urban Van Stewart. And I think he had some time to think about that. And especially as the difficulties that mounted here in this area followed, I think he just felt really bad about this. Now I want to just tell you a little bit about what happened to Urban Van after this experience. He was called by church leaders to go to southern Utah and help settle down there. And part of that was that he accepted a mission call to participate in the White Mountain Indian Mission. And they went over to Clover Valley in what is now Nevada, and cleared the land and planted crops, and then that farm was given to the native people that lived in that area. I think he was happy to be able to do that because he felt like it was a way to maybe give something back. His wife, Lydia, who was with him at the time of this event, shortly after this happened, took their 2 children and went to California. He never saw her or his daughter again. And so there he was down in southern Utah. He alone ultimately took on married 4 additional wives. He settled in Parowan and then later moved over to Adamsville near Beaver. Eventually, when the U.S. Marshals were arresting Mormon polygamists, he found it necessary to move, so he went over to Wayne County and settled in Teasdale, and then ultimately over to Grover, Utah. So Harrisville might have been our family heritage, but I have to tell you now it's Grover, Utah, and you've got some good competition. That's a nice little town. If you've never been there, I recommend it. So it's hard to find on the map, even with a map. So Urban Van, once he got over to Grover, the Marshals left him alone and he was able to live out the remainder of his life. He left he had a total of 33 children, and 24 of them were still living at the time of his death in 1898. So there are a lot of descendants of Urban Van Stewart, and I think that's one of the things that has surprised me about this whole experience is how well hidden he stayed, because there are a lot of us out here. So when he passed away, he left a legacy of industriousness and hard work. He was always willing to roll up his sleeves, do whatever physical labor was necessary. I think that might have been part of the problem here. He had worked hard and had this farm going. In his journal, he talked about how difficult those first years were. They often didn't have enough food, and I think he was just very zealous on trying to get a crop in, and maybe a little bit too zealous that night. He always strived to obey God. He was known for his high character and upright life. He was described as a man of sterling qualities, kind and generous, faithful and energetic in all the requirements of the gospel.
Is that good? Thank you all for coming out today. I'm Dr. Katie Nelson, and I'm just here representing the Weber County Heritage Foundation today. And we kind of got involved in this project on accident. But what I think is so special about what we have all created here today is that we are coming together to celebrate all the perspectives and all the many sides of a single story that you can find if you go looking. Sometimes when I'm teaching my students about ancient or medieval history and we're dealing with sources that are conflicting with each other, I like to tell my students there is no one right way to tell the story of the past. And we know this because we've experienced it in our own lives. My example is always when you're a kid and you're fighting with your sibling and your mom comes into the room and says, "What's going on here?" And you each tell your mom exactly what happened, and you have two totally different versions of the event. It's in our human nature to tell stories and tell them from our own perspective, and that's what is so great. That's once we can bring all of those narratives together, once you can look at the past from all the different angles and get all the perspectives together, that's when you really can arrive at true understanding. And to me, in listening to all these speakers today, I was really struck by the fact that this is really the story of a neighborhood. This is a story of this piece of land right here and what happened here. But the way that the Heritage Foundation became involved on accident was we started a film series last year called History in a Minute. And we just tell the history of Weber County in 1-minute videos. And we had committed to making one film in every town in Weber County. So when it came to Harrisville, we all got together and said, well, what do we know about Harrisville? And there was just kind of silence. And then we really had to go looking. And I am so struck by the fact that I knew nothing about this story until last year when I actively went looking for a story in Harrisville. Come to find out, this incredibly significant thing happened here. And then we came to find out that there was a monument out here somewhere. There's a monument. We said, what on earth? Who put it there? And where is it? And just finding it was an adventure in itself. But we came out here to film at the monument. And someone came out of the door and said, you should go knock on that door right there. And we were like, are we in trouble? We go knock on the door. And it was Tyler's house. And we discovered the story of this monument that we were filming this history in front of, that it hadn't been put up by a city, it hadn't been put up by a foundation or the state, it had been put up by the people. I'm gonna get emotional because it's such an amazing story. These people put up the monument. Dennis Probasco and Tyler Melrose, they said, this thing happened here and nobody knows and they're gonna forget, so they pooled all their money and their resources and they put it up. It really got me thinking about how history happened everywhere. It's beneath our feet everywhere. There's history of your house, there's history of your neighborhood, and you don't need an authority figure to tell you, go looking for the stories and even commemorate the stories. Find out what happened where you live and record that story for future generations. Put up a monument if you want. That's how we perpetuate our incredible, fascinating, complex history. That's how we pass it on to the next generations. Go looking for all the stories and stop and think, do I have only one story about my history? Do I have only one story about my street? What about my own life? What other stories are out there that I might be able to find? Because the more stories that we gather together, the more we can understand the big picture of what happened. It makes us less likely to cast heroes and villains in history and in our own lives, because we can see how everybody's a hero and everybody's a villain at different points in time. But as the executive director of a heritage foundation, it is just incredible to me to see a street erect their own monument to something so significant that happened in their own neighborhood. And I'm going to take that lesson forward and try to do a lot more of that in my own life. Without further ado, we're happy now to hear from Chairman.
Thank you for having us today. I've been thinking about this a lot, and it reminded me 2 years ago, I gave what I thought was a wonderful presentation to a group of second graders. At the end, I was so proud of what I'd done and shared our culture and history. And a little girl on the front row raised her hand and said, "So how did you get to become the chief?" I thought about that. And then I told her this story. I said, when a young Shoshone boy or girl does an act of kindness or service, the chief in the tribe would give that boy or girl 1 eagle feather. I then asked her, what would happen if that little girl kept doing kind things for everyone? And she said they would get more eagle feathers, of course. And I said, what if they kept doing kind things for everyone until they became an adult? What do you think would happen? And she raised her hand eagerly and said, well, by then they would have so many eagle feathers. And I said, you're right. Then I said, one day when the chief gets ready to die, and the chief is always the chief until he dies, he calls everyone together, the whole village. And he says, I want all of you to show me your eagle feathers. And it was the person that had the most eagle feathers would be the new chief. And then I told her this. You see, the chief isn't the toughest, or the bravest, or the most kind, or the one that killed the most white people. The chief is always the one who led a life of service in their community. And then I told that girl and the rest of our class, I want you guys to go be a chief today and every day. And as I sat here and listened to the speakers before me, it became clear to me that Terrikee and the way he lived that way. He was well known and liked among the pioneers that were here. And I want to believe that he had those values that chiefs have, of always giving back to the community and always making good decisions. And I want to believe that's what he was doing that day. And so, history doesn't always affirm us. Sometimes history challenges us to think about an uglier past that we'd rather not have. But that's really the power and the benefit of history. It connects us to the past. It connects us to our humanity and our inhumanity. And it always offers us a way to move forward, especially in a circumstance like this, with the Stewart family, with this community, to move forward in a way with the Shoshone people that connects us not in the prettiest of ways, but to move forward to a new relationship that I believe is a 21st century relationship based on respect. Respect for the truth and what happened in that past moment. Because then that's when you get the possibility for reconciliation. And that's why we're here today. Those lessons not only have value then, but they have value in the world that we live in today. It's my hope that we can look at each other and see the beauty in our differences and embrace those qualities that we all have that make it so unique to be here. I'm grateful to represent the Shoshone tribe today. I'm grateful for the lessons that my grandmother May Timbimbu taught me. I'm grateful for you all for being here. This is a wonderful thing And I hope you take the opportunity to find out your stories. My grandmother always told me, Darren, no one has ever wanted to hear our story. One day you will have to make them listen. And I don't feel like I've had to make anybody listen. I think the time's right. I think it's time we come together and hear each other's stories, because my story isn't any more important than yours. And so I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to take part in the beautiful ceremony today. And I hope you take away today to commit yourselves to be a better person, be a better neighbor, do acts of kindness and service. You're not going to get an eagle feather, but I want you to pretend you did get one. I had that same teacher call me a year later, and she said, you have no idea what you did for that little girl. And she would come to me every day and say, I would have gotten an eagle feather today because I was kind to someone and I played with someone at recess. So as we leave today, be that type of person. So thank you for coming, and I look forward to the unveiling and spending some time with you all after. Thank you.
Unveil our new plaque. How about that? Oh, okay.
Feeling of coming together, yes. Max is holding the picture that we had referred to earlier. This has been in the police, well, down in the police area of the city for a while, and it's a terrible picture. It's very disheartening to know that this has happened, and yes, we are now going to give it to Darren Perry so that it can be placed in a proper area so that we can understand why this was painted and why it's important in our history. And with that, I guess this is ceremonial. Harrisville City will now present it to the Chief of the Shoshone Nation.
Our Heavenly Father, we're just grateful for the opportunity that we've had to be here as community members and neighbors and friends, and soon to be friends. We are grateful for history. We're thankful for the perspectives that history offers us, and we hope we take the opportunity to learn from those different perspectives. Always have an open mind. We dedicate this plaque today, and we're grateful for the hands that made this all possible, to share this wonderful perspective and bring light and healing to this world. And we just pray that that will protect it. And when community members and visitors come and stop and look at that, they will feel the spirit of what took place here and maybe re-examine their own lives and what they can do better. We're thankful for all our blessings, for life, the chance we have to live in such a wonderful community. And we say these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Thank you again for being here. This is wonderful. Can I just, by a raise of hand, how many people live in Harrisville right now? Okay, this is amazing. All of you, the rest of you, have traveled, I'm not sure how far, but we appreciate you coming to Harrisville. I'm going to ask one more question then. How many of you have roots in Harrisville? Okay. Okay. All right, almost. Thank you again. This has been a wonderful ceremony we were able to participate in today. We appreciate the committee. Again, it was Tyler, Dennis Probasco, and Maxwell Jackson. We appreciate them. We now are going to close this ceremony, and we'll have the music playing. You can stay here as long as you like. You can go out here and look at the teepee. It's amazing. You should go in there. And then you're welcome to join the little tours and go in the back. And again, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you, and thank you for coming on a Saturday.